Can you hear us now, Councillor Walker?
Yes, I can hear.
You can hear. Well, that's jolly dandy. We've got 30 seconds to go, Neil. Well, we were. Apologies. So, have we got a call? No.
We do now.
We do now.
12 hours at a time.
Okay.
So 12 hours heading south.
Thank you, Councillor Williamson, for coming in. We were just delaying by the seconds. So you're just perfect timing. So welcome to the Audit and Risk meeting. And we'll call for the karakia, please.
E karakia te matanga. Wakatakti hau ki te uru, wakatakti hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina ki uta, kia mā tara ki tai. Kia ia ki ana te atakura, e tio, e uka, e ahu, tuturu o witi wakamawa kia Tina, hui tā.
Okay, welcome to those that are on Zoom. If you have any problems, just put your hand up and we'll try and fix it. But hopefully our sound system's working better today. So we'll move on. There's no apologies unless Councillor McIntyre, well, he's for lateness at this stage. So we'll just jot that down for lateness. Do I have a move in a second to accept those apologies? Thank you, Councillor Hughes, Councillor Williamson. All those in favour say aye. It's carried. Okay, now we move on to the confirmation of the Audit and Risk meetings, 17th of June 24. The recommendations on page 4. On your copy, we just have one alteration in the about the second line down. The 4 members of the public we've actually just put were present, and we've taken about those Christian names. So there's just a slight change there. But apart from that, everything else is as it was. That was just the signed copy that I've done there. Okay, is there any other alterations or anyone's got any concerns about the minutes? Okay, I'll move the recommendations on page 4.
So is that a question from Councillor
Walker?
Walker?
Sorry, I didn't see that. Sorry, thank you. Councillor Walker?
I just moved it.
Oh, okay, well, I'll second it then. No. Can he move it when he's on there?
You can, because we have quorum in the room.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Okay, now we'll go on to the financial operations report on page 11. The recommendations on page 11 as well. So Mike will take us through that, please, Mike.
Chair, thank you for that. So introducing the financial and operational report and noting that our focus over the last little while has been on the preparation of our annual report, which has been a little bit more exercising than usual as we're down 1 or 2 staff in our finance team, and has resulted in a significant workload on the rest of the team. So the July financial report will be presented to the next meeting of the Executive Audit and Risk Committee, and I apologise for that lateness. The annual report is progressing well and will be brought to the council at the ordinary meeting next week after next. In the finance area, I'd just like to acknowledge the work of Raylene Johnson and acknowledge that she has taken a position as the Director of Corporate Services at Stratford District Council. So we'll be farewelling Raylene later in the year, and recruitment has commenced as we try to fill some very large boots. And so we wish Raylene well and thank you for her service to this committee. We have the normal communications and engagement report there, Chair. Very happy to answer any questions.
All right, is there any questions? Actually, Raylene, you might see me there because I chaired a civil defence meeting last week, and I liked Neil's chair, so I told him to watch out for 2025. So, but anyway, any serious questions or any comments, please? All right, there appears not. Just on the social media post, I just see a little note there on predator free. I attended a predator free evening on last week at Awokera, and I must commend the staff. They did an excellent job. So I just wondered, Steve, if you could just pass on thanks, because they really did. And there was a good turnout too. A lot of good questions and everything. So very well received. Well done. Okay, so the recommendations are on page 11. Received, just take the notes of the digital update. Do I have a mover? Councillor Williamson, Councillor Hughes, all those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Okay, tab 6 is the health and safety report on page 15. So we've got Bronwyn in the room over there somewhere and Mike. So which one's?
Chair, I'll happy to kick off, and if I get out of my depth, which can happen on occasion, I'll call on Bronwyn to rescue me. So we've got the July 2024 health and safety report there. As you will note from the report, we continue to expand and try and deepen the breadth of our health and safety reporting and new information there, particularly in terms of our fleet, which is one of our higher risks that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. But as we note there, there's no specific areas of concern that bring to the committee's attention. Very happy to answer questions, Chair.
Those the records around the vehicle damage seem to be 50% insured at fault, which is TRC, isn't it? So is there any sort of driving instruction given to those who find themselves crashing vehicles?
Chair, all of those incidents are investigated, and this is why we've got this particular reporting here, is because we're doing that reconciliation between insurance and what's in our health and safety system. There are many courses of action, including remedial training for drivers that are at fault. And yes, is the short answer.
Okay, yes.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. I know it's a little bit historic now, but you did have a few agitated phone calls or something like that to staff and threatening behaviour. Is that subsided, or how are we managing that? Or
Chair, well, we have policies and procedures in place to attend to those, and we reported at the last meeting that a couple of those ended up reporting to the police. But Bronwyn, are you aware of any trends in terms of increasing or decreasing reporting through to you?
So I'm encouraging increasing reporting.
Can you come to the table?
Just come to the table, Bronwyn, please. Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. I am encouraging more reporting, especially in the near-miss area, or possibly the area that some of the team might think is less severe, because we know how quickly these incidents potentially can escalate. So we have had another couple of reports in the last couple of weeks since I wrote this report. But there are lots of different reasons why these incidents are occurring, and so our reporting is just trying to get to the bottom of why it's happened and whether, and the severity, and the systems in our supporting the capture of this information, so the wider organisation knows about them as early as possible, so that if other team members potentially are affected, they know about it.
So mentioning that one of the staff members have been abused, can you just explain to me what would happen as a result of them reporting that?
Well, so I can use an instance we've just recently had, where a couple of not so senior members attended a farm, were on a farm for compliance reasons, and had quite an aggressive approach from the landowner. They retreated, they left, and then a senior member of the team, the compliance team, went in and spoke to the landowner as soon as he possibly could. So we're not letting these things just, we're not turning a blind eye to them, and we're addressing them as soon as we can. Every instance has its own particular situation behind it that we often don't know what's going on in the background. So it's quite a tricky area to kind of negotiate our way through often. We need to make sure that we do it with respect and we get the right outcome at the other end, which is, you know, that we're, if we need to, supporting the landowner, or we're actually addressing it correctly so that for future visits on farm, they are either put through into our iris warning system so that the team know that they must you know, have support when they go on farm. So it's not to be an individual turning up to a farm situation in those instances. But we're monitoring those situations a lot more closely now, and we're getting quarterly reporting out to our managers as early as possible. And I now also get alerts if any new warnings are put through into our iris system, but they should always be put through our vault system first so that we can have a close look at what's gone on. Everything's quite a case by case, unfortunately.
I understand it, but there needs to be zero tolerance for use of staff.
Absolutely.
People are just doing their job.
Absolutely.
And even though you've had an incredibly bad day, but also some bad things happen in your life,
Totally agree.
you're not free to take it out on regional council staff. Also.
Right, seem to have covered that. Was there any other concerns about?
Mr. Chairman,
Questions, Neil?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I just, I'm a little, you know, I agree that we want to be very careful with any aggressive behaviour to staff. But on the other hand, we do get from constituents sometimes calls, maybe in some cases justified, where constituents use quite strong language to complain about particular issues or particular situations. And we wouldn't want to be in a position that we become a censorship organisation either, so that if constituents decide to call us about particular problems and express themselves fairly strongly, not necessarily threateningly, but obviously fairly strongly, we don't want to become so obsessed with security that we don't actually hear what the public is saying.
Yeah, no, I think we've understand what you're trying to say, Neil, but I think, you know, there's two different events here. One is an actual on-farm event or an on-visit event, and another one is possibly by the phone or meeting you somewhere else. So the two incidents is completely different, and especially when they're by themselves and confronted like that. I think, you know, we need to take that line that you're taking, the staff are taking, because there's two different connections there. All right, has anyone got any other? No, okay, we'll move the recommendations on page 15. Donald, would you like to move? You would?
I can do that, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman, thank
I'll
you.
second. Okay, all those in favour say aye. Okay, now we'll go on to page 22, tab 7, insurance program. Mike, speak to this. Oh, Raylene or Mike? I'll let Raylene go, shall we?
I might give it a very brief introduction, and then
She has to earn the money.
Chair, what you're seeing in the insurance market nationally and indeed worldwide is that in response to a number of significant material damage events, think cyclones and the like, and a number of significant public liability issues, insurance is becoming increasingly difficult to secure and increasingly expensive to secure. And that is an issue that is being faced by all of local government New Zealand, and ourselves are no different. We have a collaborative approach in this region where the four councils go to the marketplace together. But even then, it's relatively small numbers in terms of the national picture and the international picture. So increasingly, so there's work going on at a national level as to how the sector might address this particular issue. But it's becoming more of a risk management exercise in terms of what risks we're covering, how we're using insurance to cover some risks, and what we look to maintain as risks that we wear on our own back or self-insure for. So it's an increasingly dynamic picture. So in setting that scene, Rainen will take you through the detail, and there's one question we're posing of this committee.
So through you, Chair, I think Mike summarised it pretty well. This is every year we come to this committee and explain what our renewal terms. We've pretty much taken the approach to try as much as possible to keep the same program in place. There's a detailed schedule there at the back of the agenda item, which shows all the detail for the different policies that we have and the premium comparisons. The big change this year, as Mike has sort of introduced, is really around that public liability, professional indemnity space. Now, the main reason for that, from my understanding from our brokers, is there's been some bad court decisions lately in regards to building consents. And so that unfortunately has tainted the insurance scene for us, even as a regional council, even though we're not in that space. They look at the sector as a whole. And our previous insurance that was provided out of the London market, they withdrew. So we were limited. Our brokers actually did it was quite a late withdrawal, I understand, and there was a lot of work that went on to secure at least 2 policies that were quoted for us. One was through Aon and then one through our Marsh broker. The offering that came from the Marsh broker was still the better offering in terms of the cost of the premium versus what basically it was the same cover that was being provided, but the Marsh was slightly cheaper when you took into consideration our Harbour Master cover as well. Granted, the main concern really is the huge drop in cover that we now have. So we've gone from 300 million cover, which I have to admit was probably what we actually needed, but that was just the local government offering that was provided to the sector. But we've now dropped to only 20 million for public liability cover and 15 million for professional indemnity. Since we renewed in 1 July, our broker has come back to us to say that they have been able to secure an excess layer of another 5 million cover for professional indemnity should we want to purchase that. That would then bring our PI cover up to 20 million. The quote, however, for that is another $15,000. So because it's in addition to our standard policy, I thought appropriate to bring that to the members to see what their opinion on that. Personally, and me and Mike's professional opinions, is that based on our history, my whole time here, 11 years, we have not had a single claim. I'm not sure if Mike's ever aware of a claim that's happened in his time. Generally, being a regional council, we are a slightly lower risk than our district councils because we don't have that same exposure in the building industry. However, obviously, we still do have resource consents, and there are some liability considerations around that, and also river control schemes. So, yeah, so that really is a summary of where we got to where we are, and I just ask for you to consider the decision around whether to purchase that extra cover.
Okay.
So Chair, this really comes down to your risk appetite as to how much you're prepared to take and accept risk on your own self-insurance, on how much you wish to buy physical insurance to make you sleep a bit.
For this council vulnerability must come around flood retention works, wouldn't it? It's not going to come anywhere else.
RMA, it wouldn't be hard to imagine some quite significant legal risks in that area.
Okay. Because certainly, as far as the flood protection risk goes, should things go bad, they go very bad. And for me, I would prefer to see them record that additional cover. Because I don't think you ever regret having
right, that's one. Now Charlotte, you've got a hand up there, please.
Yeah. I completely agree with the insurance premiums increasing all over the place and people having to make hard decisions about self-insurance. So subject to discussion, I don't have an issue with dropping it. Just wanted to better understand the levels. Have you done any benchmarking in terms of other regional councils and what level of public liability cover they have? And also you talked a bit about assessing the risk, but kind of scenario analysis and what a most likely case would be on public liability.
Chair,
So through you, Chair, no, I haven't been speaking to the other regional councils, particularly on their premiums and policies for this year. But my understanding through our contact, I mean, Aon and Marsh are the major brokers in the space in New Zealand. And so we do rely on their advice. And this was the best and biggest offering that they could provide us. In terms of risks, I think the discussion that we just had around the flood schemes and the RMA, as Steve spoke to, are definitely our biggest areas of concern.
So Chair, it's clear that the rest, from my colleagues, the rest of the sector is, and the regional sector and the rest of local government in New Zealand is facing exactly the same issue. The three district councils that Taranaki that we went out to with a group are facing similar reduced levels of cover, increased levels of self-insurance and increased premiums. In terms of your question, Charlotte, about risk, funnily enough, I see more actual risk in the harbour master wreck removal space than in the flood control RM legal liability space. You've just got to look at what happened in the RENA space in the Bay of Plenty. Those can be nasty. They can be very, very complicated from maritime law and who's responsible and links of convenience and all the rest of it. So in terms of risk management, that's the one that would keep me awake at night the most, Charlotte.
And interestingly, the wreck removal cover is actually increased.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Neil, you had a comment. Charlotte, are you happy with that?
Yeah, thanks.
Neil, you wanted to add some
I
comment?
was just merely going to support what was being recommended. I think that we, unfortunately, you just can't keep on paying higher and higher premiums for non-activity. So I just think what's recommended is I'll support that.
Is anyone, no, Councillor Williamson. Pardon?
I support the recommendations.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll go a mover and a seconder then for Alan.
Sure.
Okay, happy with that? Okay, but before I do that, I'll just put in other discussions then. Anyone else? Councillor?
Just a follow comment too, and Steve saying, we've got these risks for RMA and that, but we mitigate those by doing quality work, which is well documented and fit for purpose. So one would like to think that we're doing the best we can to minimise the risks that we have, and so you can never avoid risk, but you're limiting your ability to be sued.
Chair, the observation.
No, hindsight's a wonderful thing, and the reality is there have been some challenging activities go on in this region.
And I think you add to that usually the last man standing are the councils.
That is
with the deepest pockets.
And that is why I maintain we should take the extra insurance.
But I suppose, like everything, how high do you need to go? Is from 15 million to 20 million, you need to go to 25, you need to go to 30. That's the question, there's how long's a bit of string? You never know. Never know.
On this particular one, what are we paying already?
so through you, Chair, it's in the schedule in the back of the agenda items. So it's already increased. Our premium has gone up 40,000 from the previous year, even with the reduced cover.
Yeah, so up to
Just under 100,000.
So we go to 115,000 if we took the PI insurance.
Correct.
I think it's money well spent.
Okay, well, we do have a mover and a seconder for the recommendations on page 29, 30. Do we have any further discussion on those recommendations? It appears not, so we'll put it to the meeting. All those in favour say aye. Against, carried.
I'm saying I'm against.
You're against, okay. Do you want that tabled?
Sure.
Okay, table that. Okay, thank you for that. Yeah, sorry to see you going. We'll shed a
Through
few
you, Chair,
tears.
I'm quite sorry to be going too.
We'll shed a few tears later on.
But yeah, it's
It's not too late to change.
it's a great opportunity.
Okay, now we'll move on to item 8 on page 28, the public transport single stage business case. And we've got Cheryl, Robert and Andrew on Zoom. So if he doesn't like what's going on, he can just zoom out. I don't think he'll do that. So Robert was going to go out the door. But anyway, listen, I'll leave it for you to introduce this, Cheryl, please. It has been quite a long time getting to this stage, and we've got some further work to do. But you know, in the meantime, I'd like to thank you all for hanging in here, and there was a lot of work done, and really commend you for sticking with it.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for sticking with us. Look, the purpose of today is to present to you the working draft of the single stage business case, which, as you know, contains the preferred new bus network. So the network offers a more desirable service and has been designed so it better serves our people by taking them where they want to go. It also has clear community support as the preferred option. So today's goal is to seek what is essentially an in-principle agreement from yourselves for the business case, which is sort of morphed into a roadmap or a funding strategy. What that means is you're agreeing to a phased approach, which will enable us to progressively implement the network improvements. So the place we need to start is with the bronze option. And we believe that the bronze option can be introduced, so pretty much cost neutral. Unfortunately, frequency increases in this funding environment are unlikely. One thing to note is that as we move through the options, bronze through to gold, each stage is not competing. It's simply turning up the dial on frequency as funding becomes available. And as you'll know, increased frequency will result in overall network efficiency. So the title does have working draft in it. That's because the peer review, whilst it's been completed by Invice, at our end, we're still finalising that and working through the 5 key observations. I think in between the closing of the agenda and now there's been some movement, so I'll get Robert and Andrew to speak to that. One thing that we'll make clear is that the peer review does not impact on your decision making today. The remaining changes are focused on the clarity of the business case, and again, we'll talk you through that. In the agenda memo, it states that the finalised SSBC will be presented to the next ordinary council meeting. Look, my apologies, that's not correct. It'll be this version that moves through in the agenda to the ordinary council meeting. I just wanted to clear that up. So once the loose ends of the peer review are completed, and we've been given direction by you today, the business case will be finalised, and that will actually happen fairly quickly. So what we are requesting today is that the approval of the finalised business case can be delegated to the chair of this committee. So that will mean we'll be able to present the business case to NZTA for endorsement or approval, whatever they do with it, and then proceed to the procurement phase. It's critical that the procurement phase begins shortly. As you know, we must give operators a year to set up. So getting out to market soon means we'll be able to run a robust and competitive process, which is imperative. Look, from us on sort of more of a personal level, we feel your pain in not being able to deliver the high frequency gold version straight off the bat. When we started this process, we were under a government that was demanding transformational change. Nothing less would do. That's not the position now. We're under a government that is looking at value for money. So it was a pretty sharp 180 by the team. And we have done everything we can to make sure that the business case puts us on a path to success.
And as Mike said to me the other day, look, the business case will sit in our top drawer. And it's ready to go as soon as the funding situation changes. So I'll pass you on to Robert and Andrew, who will drop into all of the detail and answer all of your questions.
Just before you do that, I do sort of have a question or a query. And it's about moving up to the next stages. You've put it around funding only. Surely the usage or the patronage would also take us through those steps. I mean, just putting funding in if it's not being utilised is really pointless, going up to the next stages. So from the bronze to the silver to the gold, won't we be tracking the patronage to see how high demand is for what we've already got? Because I'd hate to see putting just the money in and then not getting the patronage. I mean, we talk about the estimate 90% increase and et cetera. It really doesn't mean much to me. I'd like to really know what you're expecting bums on seats, if I can use that word, is more important than estimating 90%. 90% of what? 25% of what is my concern. So I really think we should be also thinking, rather than just, hey, getting the funding, we need to look at the patronage of it as well. And that's my opinion. Alan, you've got a comment.
Excuse me. Along similar lines, I was the same. I'm happy to go along with your bonds, but not to agree today to go up in further levels, because I can't see advantages from it. For example, from the bronze to silver level for anything other than Plymouth, there is no change in service delivery with regard to connector bus and all that listed in the plan. I think that sort of stuff will need some discussion if you do get more funding about where appropriate you could be spending. And you need those details with regard to batteries, etc., to make those informed decisions. So I'm happy with the bond system going forward, but also through the peer review, but also stipulated in there too, was happy to support the bonds, but that's what we're talking about today, not going on further.
Mike, I hear you draw wind.
Draw consideration. Chair, as Cheryl has correctly noted, we're operating in a very limited funding window. This is basically the funding window we've been given is no change from the existing funding window. This bronze case allows us to make a number of significant changes within that envelope that allows us to have an improved offering. Any change in funding that would allow us to move to an increased level, be it silver or gold, is a ways away. We've been given an indicative window, 3-year funding window. We will, I'd say you're probably 2 to 3 years before you could seriously expect that to change. Of course, at that point, the local share also increases. So that conversation with this committee and the fuller council through an annual plan or an LTP process would absolutely have to happen, and it will consider the full range of factors.
Okay.
Needed to make an informed decision.
But in helping our payment funding would also help if our patronage was going up, or we had increased demands and pressures of patronage. Surely, because we're not just going to get it, we're not going to write it out if we've got no patronage increase
through
or
chair,
demand.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Of the argument. Yeah. Neil or Charlotte, I can't see you too well now. The presentation's up. Have you got any questions just before we go on to Robert and Andrew?
Only to note that the increase in, or the assumption of 40% fare box recovery, I think at the moment is based on us assuming increase in passenger numbers. And so obviously that's a risk that if we don't get that from these changes, then we'll need to increase fares to account for that 40%. That was only just my thoughts following that discussion.
Okay, thank you. Neil, you haven't got any just before we move on? No, okay.
And through you, Chair, and just addressing that point on fare box recovery, that is a conversation that is starting to occur with NZTA Waka Kotahi as we speak. That will be challenging because it's a spiral you enter into of increasing fares makes reduced occupancy or numbers of users. You then you don't meet your target around your fare box recovery, therefore you need to increase charges again. It's a vicious circle spiral that you end up in, and not particularly helpful for improving public transport services overall. So we'd rather be in that spiral of increasing passenger numbers, patronage numbers, and meeting our fare box recovery through that way.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have a discussion.
But very, very challenging.
Yeah. Okay, Robert and Andrew, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So, team.
Or do you mind if we ask questions as we go through?
Yeah, just as we go through.
Okay, so if you can just come through me, just so I can.
So the team have given a presentation. You've actually covered a whole lot of the content of the presentation and the conversation we've just had. So hopefully I can whistle through things to the points you want to ask questions. So I will just pop through to that slide. So what we're covering today is just an update, and the version that you've got in the papers of the business case updates the business case in terms of all the further information requests from our previous meetings with you, fleshes out the arrangements that have been evolving with New Plymouth District Council, improves our summary of the preferred option, so it's a bit clearer, which is one of the comments from the peer reviewer. I'm going to give you a bit of a summary of the key points raised by the independent peer reviewer, which is covered in the paper as well. I'm also going to talk a little bit about some late comments we had on the business case from Waka Kotahi that we received around about Thursday last week, so clearly aren't reflected in the memo and that we're responding to. Alignment with GPS policy, we've talked about that a bit already. And the purpose of this paper is to request approval of the final SSBC subject to any further amendments that we need to do in response to the peer reviewer and the points raised by Waka Kotahi now. I think that last point is the really important one in terms of the context of the decision you're making today. It's an endorsement of a business case that sets out a 30-year plan to get to that level of service and goal in terms of the mode shift we achieve and the investment in the network. Business cases are, you can't kind of set them and forget. You can't put them on the top shelf and say, right, we've done the business case, it's over. You need to constantly monitor and adjust the business case. As your funding availability changes, to the chair's point, as your patronage and demand changes, you're going to need to look at the business case again and say, okay, what more can we do now in that journey from where we are today in bronze to where we want to be in gold? And at each of those steps, the normal practice is you do an addendum business case, what's called an addendum. So you go back, you check the economics, you have to justify to NZTA that they would increase the amount of money they allocate to you. And you would have to go back to your ratepayers and have the same conversation about potentially increasing your rate or your fares. On the fare box, it's not this paper, but I can't resist because I've been in the place on NZTA's side of the fence with the previous national government where we got quite forceful about trying to achieve a 50% fare box recovery for public transport networks across the country. Didn't take us long as NZTA and the government long to realise that really that 50% target related to the metros where you had a service that was capable of achieving a 50% recovery. So it's like Mike and the team will have to resurrect all the old memos about why fare box is lower in our provincial centres. So we've been here before, we'll push through it in ZTA, and the government in its previous iteration went through that cycle. So it is what it is. Been here before. And then we'll outline quickly the next steps. So first up, in the memo, when we presented to you last time, you asked for some more information about the coverage of the network. So what percentage of the population under the different options was going to have either improved or lower levels of service in terms of accessibility to a bus route. So you'll recall we started with three options, a throughput option, a balanced option, and a modified option. and they give us different levels of coverage. So this map is talking about how much of the population would be in New Plymouth would be within 400 metres walking distance to a bus route in 2053 under an option that was purely focused on throughput, so maximising the frequency of trips between your key destinations. And so we got to a place of 46,300 people would be within 400 metres of a bus stop. 400 metres seen as a nice, easy walking distance. The balanced option, which had more of those loopy runs up into the hill, up the hill from the central business district, saw us getting to 54,000, 55,000 of the population being within that distance. And then we did our modified option, which was again slightly better, much the same really in terms of your coverage. So I suppose the point of that is we've tried to balance the network where there aren't significant populations of winners and losers. In fact, overall, we're improving the coverage with the balanced modified, which is the option we're going for or recommending you go for. And pause there because I know Charlotte had some questions about these maps.
I didn't see your hand up, so. Charlotte?
Yeah, that's great. Really good to see. And it's good to see that, we get the balanced option. It's 10,000 more people that have easy access to public transport, which is, I think, the important part about making sure we've got an accessible system that really serves the population. So thanks for those maps. Appreciate it.
So obviously with every business case, we do this benefit cost ratio calculation, coming out with I suppose the point I want to make here, because the BCRs are really, really close, and once you apply margins for errors, they probably overlap. What's remarkable about this business case is that we land on BCRs for a provincial centre, albeit a growing provincial centre, that are one or better for a public transport network. That's not common. So we feel like we found you a really good optimal network where at least you are getting that one-to-one dollar in, dollar benefit. Quite often the BCRs are less than one because the other benefits, the social benefits, aren't counted, and you only get to one if you try to find a way of maximising the social benefits. So we're getting the benefits without having to count those hard to quantify benefits. And that's because we've got this optimal network that we planned out. So just picking up on the patronage numbers. So look, these are modelled numbers. I'm a bit cynical about models. So I go with the chair's thing about you need to monitor patronage, and as it grows and increases, make your decisions based on that rather than the modelled numbers. In NZTA's feedback to us, they've queried the estimated 25% increase in overall daily bus patronage by 2035. And they've asked us to go back and rerun the model. So we are doing that at the moment. I suspect it is a little bit optimistic, that number.
Do you think, is your instinct that this is realistic or not?
I think that estimated 25% by 2035 is optimistic.
So what is realistic?
I'd be hoping for in the 10 to 15% range.
Oh, if you're going to redo the numbers, we'll see what that comes.
Yeah, we'll see what it comes up with.
Comes back.
So, doesn't change the BCR. It'll change some of the financials, and we'll need to look at how that washes through. But again, that's the thing. These business cases, you're making a decision now. You've got a whole lot of uncertainties wrapped up in this business case around the actual cost of the contracts. Once you test the market, we've had to work on the numbers we've been able to use based on our understanding of the current market. We don't know what prices you're going to get in the tender box. So that's going to affect the economics as well. So you've got a whole bunch of decisions to make about the speed with which you move to get to bronze, silver, gold, based on what funding you've got available, what the government's prepared to put in, what fares your communities are able to tolerate. That's the work of the next 3 to 10 years, really. So we are redoing those numbers and we can report back to you once we've done them. But I'd expect them, realistically, my gut is saying, yeah, actually NZTA, when you ask us about that 25%, it'd say really that was quite a high number. 10 to 15 would be more reasonable for the improvements we've made. So you have been working closely with New Plymouth District Council around the idea of a joint committee to govern the implementation of public transport and the implementation of this business case. So the business case has been updated to reflect that. And I suppose the key point is, as a consequence of that, you are able to sit down and have that conversation with NPDC about the adjustments that might need to be made to the network, their willingness to invest in extra infrastructure to help drive demand as well, because infrastructure is an important driver of demand. All of those kind of things, you're able to have a much better operational conversation by talking about these issues together. So it's awesome that you've been able to make progress.
It's a very positive move that's happened through this process.
And over time, I would hope, the conversation might become can we do this regionally, or is that something the regional transport is going to do? That's how it's evolved in other regions. It's either done jointly or it's done, the regional services are done through the RTC. So the preferred option does have your regional services in it with some improvements and changes to them. I might pause here. Councillor Jameson, you intimated you wanted to talk about this stuff. So
no, it's one of the fastest growing services. I just noticed there wasn't an increase in change of service time at the silver level in your models. If we lose out in the smaller regions with regard to disability service or transport for those that are disabled, and those things are the main course of this. I think would be better worded as a New Plymouth plan, not a regional plan. So I think the regional areas, i.e. smaller towns, definitely miss out on services that could be assisted with or helped with through this whole plan, and missing out on this, which was one of that I'm concerned with. But
maybe just from an operational perspective through you, Chair, we're currently organising to run a Hawara to New Plymouth morning and afternoon service, so that will start shortly, and that will be carried over into the new service. It's just not put into the new service because we're going to start it now. So we are very aware, and that's an accessibility service as well, very aware of that demand. So those conversations absolutely will happen. Yeah.
Just don't start it before the end of October, otherwise we'll get caught up with the road.
We'll only go halfway.
Yeah. Good point.
They're closing your state highways too in September and October.
Yeah, north in the morning, south in the afternoon, which suits the bus service.
Okay.
Disastrous.
People travelling the opposite direction. I'm very happy.
Yeah, State Highway 1 is being closed between Tirau and Taupo progressively through September and October. Pothole prevention comes at a cost. So just refreshing the preferred option, it gives us those outcomes in terms of over time increasing your daily bus patronage because the bus service is more attractive, it's more accessible to people, so more people are able to access the services. Less important for this government, but potentially important for another government, is that reduction in transport emissions of CO2. And the level of service improves in terms of your bus travel time under the gold option and even under the bronze option. And we're able to bring New Plymouth Airport into the public transport network. So there's some gains in this option, and the fact that we can fit the bronze option under your existing funding envelope, we think, is quite significant. So we've talked about the differences between the options. This slide was some feedback we got from our peer reviewers, was that They were struggling to see the difference between bronze, silver, and gold in the original business case, as I think you were when you were putting us to the question last time we met. So we've made a bunch of changes, like the introduction of this table into the business case, just to make it much, much clearer what the differences between those options are. Keep moving unless there's questions on the differences.
No, well, anyone got any questions? All right.
Well, as we said earlier, I'm happy with the old stuff as it moves in the various stages of development before we put it.
You'll have to, before you move, you're going to have to do a lot more. Yeah. Okay, I think the next slide is, gets into the independent peer review. So the peer reviewer, who is a transport consultancy who specialise, it would be fair to say, in peer review of business cases, is one of the things they do a lot of work in Vines. So they've concluded that the process and recommendations of the business case are robust and appear to be sensible approach to investing in public transport in the region. And they made 5 key observations to us. And I'll just walk through those key observations. They're in the covering paper, but I'll just go through them. So they wanted to make it clearer that the bronze option is the recommended option, and that we're not requesting any additional, or that no or very limited funding increases are being requested at this stage to deliver the bronze, based on what we understand today around the cost of operating the network. They wanted us to make it clearer that the bronze option is a step on the way toward gold, which is the long-term aspiration. So that's the getting it clear how the two relate together. My screen. They suggested some changes to the problem and benefits statements and the KPIs, which are kind of where we started from in the business case. And NZTA did too. NZTA asked us to delete all references to greenhouse gas emissions from the ILM because it wasn't attractive to the government of the day. We've taken the view that this business case is a 30-year business case, that the problem statements, the projected benefits, the KPIs are relevant regardless of the government of the day. It's just what you choose to focus on. So you don't change the business case just because the GPS is fundamentally flipped. Keep to the strategy and you adjust what you're bidding for with the government of the day and what its priorities are.
Can I ask about that? So is there a process where we can put out tenders that don't require that level of emissions when you tender? Can you tender not requiring the whole fleet to go electric? To me, I believe electric is like a stepping stone for what needs to happen. I'm happy with reducing emissions, but if it is a priority going out to tender, I think we're going to be pretty upset with the costs that come back with requiring that level of electric vehicles. Going to be hugely expensive, and you're either going to sacrifice service because you won't have the funds, or for the cost of emissions, where I feel if you look for a level of vehicle that maybe put out less emissions, was more user friendly, you would get a lot more bang for buck, if you like, with regard to transport services. You know, do we have to be on that such a high level to have electric vehicles implemented at this stage?
So through you, Chair. There's 2 sides to that, really. So there's the regional council's perspective that we must move towards the carbon neutral if we can. We must, and we have legislation that we must comply with.
Is that with regard to delivering these services?
Yes. What was interesting is, and I think I've mentioned this, when Horizons went out to market, they did something similar to what we'll do. That we will be very clear around what our aspirations are. But we do need to leave a certain amount of that decision making to the operator. We can't tell them what to do. And Horizons were very surprised that I think 3 out of the 4 operators that tendered all came back with electric fleets.
I think if that is something you're asking for and asked for, that they will give you that option. They will always come back with that. I just think it would be the cost to do that. I would like to know the comparison between it. I'm all in favour of reducing emissions. For example, the electricity that was used for these vehicles was done in a carbon neutral type way as well. We're running an electric vehicle, we're paying for the electricity by importing coal, but it seems to me a little bit not creating the right atmosphere. So for those reasons, I would like to see the reduction in emissions, but I don't think we're quite ready to go for electric in this country yet. Wherever we are, it's going to be a huge cost to us. I just think, more bang for buck on lots of vehicles with, as I say, reduced emissions, but not at that stage, whether that be helpful or certainly give us a better financial base to give more services. I think that's entirely up to the operators acting at the time and what your expectations are with the service.
And supply as well. Supply of.
Of course, yeah, there is.
And there is other technologies going on all the time to reduce emissions. So, I mean, I'm sort of with you. I don't think we should get totally focused on electric.
No.
There is a lot of manufacturers doing a lot of work in that powered unit now, which is not electric. So I think, we need to, rather than just focus on purely electric, we need to look at reducing emissions by an alternative way, and maybe just set a type of goal. Because putting it out there for a tender to say that we will, and we won't be able to because of supply. And you've also got to look at the pavement damage too of those heavier vehicles. They are a lot heavier on the pavement. So we won't have the district council screaming and yelling and all the bus stops are all breaking up. So we've got to be a little bit careful about just pushing one powered supply, I think, to gain the end result. So whether there's a way around to actually include that or.
So, Chair, we've heard you loud and clear. We're heading really into operational matters here.
Yeah.
The tender will be structured to elicit the best responses from the market and let the market do its work.
Well, that's what you've indicated in the report.
And just speaking to the key recommendation of this report, which is to endorse the business case. The business case is assuming that that's out of scope, that the choice of mode will happen through the procurement conversation in terms of EV versus diesel versus electric versus hydrogen. We've had to kind of ring fence that as a thing. We've assumed that you'll move to electrification in the way we've written it, but that's going to depend on what you hear back from the market.
Robert, did you have something to say? Andrew, sorry.
Yeah, just in addition to what Robert added there, yeah, so as well as looking at EVs in the future, which is an MOT requirement, in terms of our business case, in terms of the benefits in emission reduction are from people going from private vehicles onto the bus rather than the type of fuel, the way the bus is powered. So just to be clear, our benefits on people moving onto PT rather than the vehicles itself, as Robert rightly said, that's moved through to procurement because we can't predict exactly where that will go into the future and over what stage.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Andrew.
Okay.
And interestingly, that was a conversation we had to have with NZTA about a bunch of their last minute feedback, which was, EVs could be really expensive to operate. Have you really costed this up properly? And we said, well, that is a decision over there. But it does feel like if NZTA is starting to raise that value for money concern, there's a conversation between the government about its mandates and NZTA and yourselves as you move through your procurement process.
Way more nuanced than black and white.
Yeah.
And the market is good.
Yeah. Okay, and then the last point the peer reviewers raised was the linkage between this business case and the NPDC transport program business case, and making that relationship clearer. So the team have been kind of attempting to reflect that. Obviously, we're in a place where NPDC, I think we're ahead of us in terms of progress. Their business case, the broad transport program business case, has stalled with feedback from NZTA that they're having to work through. So we're now getting in front of them. So there's a bit of backward and forward to go on through that. And again, this is something that PT subcommittee is going to need to work through as the NPDC business case evolves. And then just looking quickly at NZTA, the rest of NZTA's feedback to us. So the EV conversation we just had was a key part of it. They've asked us to do some more work on our benefit cost ratios to show what's called an incremental benefit cost ratio between the options. So an incremental BCR is a way of displaying how much more benefit you get for more investment. So you kind of calculate what is the BCR above what we would have got for the do minimum. You know, is it 0.2 extra benefit or 0.4 extra benefit or 0.5? It's better, to be honest, to calculate that when you submit a proposal to go beyond bronze and you actually have real numbers. We will do it to satisfy NZTA, but it probably won't help your storytelling hugely because we don't know enough to really give you decent numbers, but it's NZTA being NZTA. Probably someone on the phone call getting cross with me at the moment, but never mind. And to be honest, in my old role, I would have asked for an incremental BCR, even though I knew that it would have to be redone when you came to me asking for new money. So it's a fair request. And then they asked us to look at that patronage increase, which I've talked about before. So nothing major from NZTA, all stuff we can clean up and explain, and a lot of it becomes things you need to cover when you start telling an investment story for additional improvements on your journey to gold. Okay. So we will now, I've got some slides here on what the GPS says. So the peer reviewer agrees with our assessment that the outcomes sought within the SSBC are well aligned with the supporting economic growth and productivity goals of the new GPS. And they've also highlighted some further improvements that we can put flashing lights around, which will help us to achieve those benefits under gold quicker if we ever got the gold investment. I think NZTA, I think if you look in the business case, we did a self-assessment where we said that we thought we were highly aligned with NZTA, with the GPS. I think NZTA are saying, no, you're more of a medium alignment with the GPS, so that we're being a bit more optimistic and positive than our NZTA colleagues, but we're certainly not unaligned. And if you look again at the GPS, your investment is down as probable for your public transport services, which means it's basically all but confirmed at the level that they've allocated. And then there was a slide here just emphasizing that this business case is part of a longer journey, which is painted by your regional land transport plan and the RPTP that you're working on, and that we're all very much aligned across the regional council's priorities in terms of increasing that level of mode shift. So assuming you agree today to endorse the business case as your path forward, the next steps, as we've already talked about, is to progress that procurement process, to establish the joint committee, and for Cheryl and her team to start the implementation planning for the new network. You know, where are we going to require new bus stops, all that kind of stuff, and your communication around that for your passengers. And Cheryl and the team will continue to update you regularly, as well as the PT subcommittee, on changes that we're seeing in the system and where there are opportunities for improvement. And that's all I've got for you today.
Any questions? Silence is golden. Just with the MPDC funding of is it 200,000? So where does that sit now in the bigger picture? But is that, I mean, they were looking at frequency of what, 15 minutes or something like that to do the trial. So where's that trial sit now? Is that?
So through you, Chair, we're working on that with MPDC. We have a planning meeting in about 2.5 weeks' time. I've been told by MPDC, with a colleague from MPDC, to come to that meeting with some options around what that could look like. So we're developing 3 options now. We need to cost them, and then we'll be taking them back to them with options. We're looking at perhaps just increasing a couple of our high patronaged routes that already exist. We're looking at something east-west, but 200k doesn't go a long way. So there's a bit of work, but it's happening at the moment. So it'll sit as a trial
Underneath this.
outside of this work.
Okay, that's just what I was questioning.
Sorry, yes.
Alan.
I just have, I'm trying to get my head around with NZTA, they talk about a reduction in transport emissions by travelling in a larger vehicle. They are presuming that the larger vehicle, I presume, is electric and is very efficient. And we would also have to have a near full bus or capacity to come up with some of the numbers they have. What I'm trying to get at is if you run around in a bus that say you've got minimum number of people, and it certainly isn't more efficient than running 2 or 3 electric cars, which does happen nowadays. So for those reasons, for a bus to be a lot more efficient on emissions, it needs to be reasonably full. I don't know how that would stack up with regard to them saying they want to reduce emissions by putting you into a bus, when most people, or a lot of the people, might be running electric cars anyway. So.
Through the chair, we actually have high patronage in this region. We're one of the highest. So our buses average.
Well, the commuter network, the urban commuter
regional,
network.
no, the full regional network, we have an average of over 10 people per bus, which is quite high. The likes
How
of
many people can these buses take?
so I think it's about 30 sitting, and then there's room for standing as well.
Right,
That's electric.
So 10 passengers.
Average, yes, right across 24.
So 34.
But then you'll have a bus, for example, the Waitara bus, which is fully loaded. The connector buses
Connector
fully
buses
loaded.
fully loaded. School time they're fully loaded. So the other times
So we do
I'll
quite
have
well.
two or three.
Okay, we're just
I'm trying to think, why do we have to? Is it going to be that much more efficient to run electric buses to reduce emissions than if you're taking people out of cars? Well, cars not electric anyway, so it seems to be that there isn't a lot of work done on where the people come from, what they've traveled with. Those things. I'm just trying to get around having the sheer cost of all the EVs really, initially to provide a very good service.
Well, in all fairness, councillor, I think what we need to do is just wait till we talk to the tenderers, the market, and just see what they offer. I mean, you've got the range, and they'll try and work out, because they're going to make money out of this as well, to make out which is the best vehicles for their individual routes. So I think we're getting into the operational side rather than the policy side. So I think you've made your point, and I think Cheryl and the team will sort of take that forward with the procurement.
The recommendations.
We'll just see if there's any more discussion first. I know you might think lunch, you've got your bellies to think about, but it's a way off yet. Is there any further? Charlotte or Neil, are you quite comfortable?
Yeah, I'm comfortable. I've had quite a few discussions with the team offline to better understand this. So just want to thank him for all the work and let's keep this progressing.
Okay, so, Andrew, you got that? Oh, sorry, just before I go, Andrew, you got any more comments before we?
No, Robert and Cheryl covered that off very well, so thank you very much.
So you've had an easy time then. Yeah. Okay. Mike, you were just
Chair, at the risk of dragging the conversation on, I just wanted to give a very quick update on what's happening around the joint committee. So we've got a draft terms of reference, and we've got some feedback. It's been through several rounds of feedback from New Plymouth District Council. It was my intention to take it to the next ordinary meeting in a week or two's time, but I'm just conscious that I don't necessarily want to get ahead of New Plymouth's times. So we may delay it to get alignment between the two councils. But so if you do see it on the agenda for the next ordinary meeting, that's great. And if you don't, it'll be the following ordinary meeting. We are also extending the invites. There is invitations being extended to Stratford and South Taranaki District Councils to participate if they find it of use and of value to do so. We're conscious that the vast majority of the services and the funding is North Taranaki centric, so but we do run a regional service.
Okay, is there any further discussion? We've got to
Not
move-
really, Mr. Chairman, if I may, but just one comment. You come over, I'm here in Azerbaijan, and if you look at the price of diesel here, it's 95 cents a litre. And if you think about it, the whole of our bus services and everything are hobbled by the numbers of taxes, and while the government gives money out in all these sorts of ways, the fact is they've created a high-cost system which tends to make the system the economic problems that we're talking about here.
Okay, heard your point. Any further discussion? We have a mover and a seconder. So if there's no further discussion, the recommendations are on 29 to 30. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Against, carried. Okay, well, thank you for that. We've made some big decision today, so that gives you a clear message to go forward. And thank you, the team, once again. It's been a heck of an exercise, and also thank all those submitters that have put hours of time in as well. So well done, but you've just got to keep it rolling.
Thank you, Chair, and we'll be back.
We'll be back.
As we move along.
But no, thank you very much. It's a good effort.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we'll move on to tab 9, which is the Yarrow Stadium project update. Now, I'm not sure if Jindy and Bruce, are they coming in, Nick? Jenny is online, is she? Okay.
Chair.
So is Bruce coming in, Mike? Do you know? Or pardon? Not this part. Okay, not for this part. Okay, Mike, I'll let you lead it off.
Chair, so as with most of the recent reporting on Yarrow Stadium, we've got the open public part of the meeting where we're talking about progress on the project, and then the public excluded part of the meeting where we're talking about the finances and risk management part of the project. So in terms of the open part of the meeting, as those of you that may or may not have watched the rugby yesterday afternoon, progress is moving apace. The stand is looking every week or so, it's at that phase where you're making significant observable progress. So we've got good roofing is getting very close to the struts all being completed, and the stand being closed in, at which point you will then head to the part of the build where everything's closed in and all the work inside it is happening and it's less observable. But no, the progress project is on good terms. It's still on time to be completed in March of next year, and we'll discuss the finances and the rest of the budget and the public excluded. I'm happy to answer any questions, Chair. Jendi, did you wish to add anything to that?
That's me. Oh, she's back.
Yeah, sorry, apologies, the old mute. That's a good summary, Mike. Just on the roof, the structural flex part of the roof is scheduled to start the 16th of September, so that's next week. So that'll look pretty good, and then that's the roofing done. So all the steel is now in place, which is a pretty great milestone. That was complete last week.
Very good. Any questions, discussions? Everyone's nice and quiet, so they must have liked the update.
Good to see the project.
Good to see the project.
It'll be good to see it finished, Chair.
I think the public are recognising now, once they see it, sitting in the other stand looking across, they realise what they're going to get, and I think that's important. So we're not getting knockers that we were getting, so which is very positive, and it'd be great to, as you say, see the project to the end. Okay, with that, we're just noting the progress, so I'll move that. Do I have a seconder? Donald, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Okay, now we'll move into public excluded. Now, it'll just take a couple of minutes to clear everything, so I'll have a mover and a second. I'll move, if you like, and Councillor Jamieson will second. Those in favour say aye. So we'll just take a short brief